Charles Darwin, A Study of the Past for a Man of the Future. Charles Darwin's Theory of Evolution and Exploring the Galapagos. Charles Darwin was born on February 12, 1809, in Shrewsbury, United Kingdom. His mom died when he was very young, and he was raised by his sisters and his father, Robert Darwin, who was a doctor. By his early 20s, Darwin planned to follow a medical career and studied at Edinburgh University. After attending Edinburgh for 2 years, Darwin switched to Cambridge University in 1827 to get his bachelor's degree and become a clergyman, for he thought this religious path would give him opportunities to study natural history and science. He spent most of his childhood and adult life being fascinated by nature, and he decided to follow a different path in 1931 when he got the opportunity to volunteer for a 5-year expedition around the world on the HMS Beagle, a 90-foot-long and 24-foot-wide ship that was previously used in the Royal Navy. They set sail from England on December 37, 1831, under Commander Fitzroy's leadership, on a mission to chart the coast of South America. The Beagle sailed along the coastline of Argentina, through the Strait of Magellan, and into the Pacific Ocean. He spent most of his time on this journey on land, exploring exotic parts of the world, investigating geology, and furthering his studies as a naturalist. Darwin noted that plants and animals he studied had definite South American characteristics, meaning most of the wildlife was acclimated to the warm temperatures and tropical terrain of South America. After 3 years of charting the South American coast, the Beagle arrived at San Cristobal Island, the easternmost island of the Galapagos archipelago that is now part of Ecuador. No part of the Beagle voyage is more famous today than the time in the Galapagos Islands. The Beagle was there for 5 weeks, starting September 15th to October 20th, 1835. Crew members charted 13 of the major islands. Darwin spent his time on the Galapagos carefully studying and observing the inhabitants of the islands. He journaled, mapped, sketched, and diligently wrote down observed information. Charles Darwin landed at a total of 4 of the islands in the Galapagos archipelago. Darwin and the rest of the crew continued circumnavigating the globe, and the Beagle arrived back in England on October 2, 1836. He was anxious to come home after his 5-year absence, but he was quick to begin going over his research. Darwin pondered over his information, spending every day going through his research and sketches. Years went by. Darwin published The Voyage of the Beagle, a general account of his observations. He also published a number of books and research papers that were based off of his journey around the world. Charles Darwin never became a clergy. Science just took over and filled all of his time. He was married to his cousin, Emma Wedgwood, in January 1839. Darwin felt he was at the peak of his life, but his best work was yet to come. Charles Darwin is often credited with coming up with the theory of evolution, but Darwin was not the first to discover this. Scientists had already come up with this theory by the end of the 18th century. The very first was Frenchman Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck, who called this theory transformism. Darwin learned of this at Cambridge, but stayed a creationist until after the voyage of the Beagle. After his time at the Galapagos, this idea seemed to be an explanation to a lot of his observations. Though this idea was against his religion, Darwin researched it and tried to make the connections. The reason Darwin gets all the credit for the theory of evolution is because he was the first to truly explain why and how evolution worked, and he called it evolution through natural selection, which is the process by which certain inherited features allow a species to thrive. A survival of the fittest complex. Many things could be the cause of changes in species, like mutation, migration, genetic drift, or completely random change. But natural selection is the most powerful and important cause of evolutionary change. Darwin worked on his species theory and gathered information for his big release. In May 1856, Charles Lyell, a mentor of Darwin, warned him that other naturalists were getting closer and closer to Darwin's belief. Darwin took that advice and worked on condensing his research into a book that we would later call On the Origin of Species, by Means of Natural Selection. This book made little to no impact at first. but at the release of this abstract of unfinished work, he would change the world forever. The Origin of Species was about the origination of all species, not any one species, including mankind. An Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection was published in November 1859. The accusations in the book shocked readers across the world. Saying that science and natural laws controlled the universe was and still is controversial. As what Darwin exposed to the world intrigued some, it offended most. His theory caused a worldwide debate. Darwin expected religious objections, but what he was concerned with was the views of fellow scientists and colleagues. Thomas Huxley, an English naturalist, was known as Darwin's bulldog because he strongly supported Darwin's theory of evolution and defended it whenever he could. The Church of England was opposed to Darwin and his studies. They had their scientific establishment reacting against the book and attacking Darwin whenever possible. There was even an 1860 Oxford evolution debate during a meeting with the British Associations for the Advancement of Science. Charles Darwin demanded to be taken seriously, and soon, most scientists accepted that evolution was true. Darwin was widely regarded as a scientific revolutionary by 1870. He had transformed the story of the natural world.